Hey everybody, it's Emily. I'm back with another Grasshopper microclass, hanging out today near the cabin on a beautiful sunny morning. So today I want to talk to you guys about sort of a current hot topic in nature, that is the highly pathogenic avian influenza or bird flu that's right now affecting both our domestic birds like chickens, but also our wild birds. So we'll go over just some basics of avian influenza, then we'll go over the current status in Michigan, and then we'll talk about ways that you can help these wild birds, but also domestic birds if you have them. Okay, some more basics on avian influenza. Birds can spread it through their saliva, their mucus, or their feces. And as you can imagine, that means that people can also spread it around if you raise poultry or have a backyard flock. And you share equipment with your neighbor, or egg cartons or crates, anything like that that has infected virus on the surface. It can be spread that way. It can be spread through people's clothing and shoes. It can also be spread from birds sharing water. So that obviously applies to domestic birds, but also when wild birds might visit bird baths, and it can be spread from birds sharing feed. And then the major signs of an infected bird will be things like lack of coordination or tremors, so like those neurological impairments. Also just a real lack of energy or appetite, like an inability to stand or fly. Some birds will get nasal discharge, crusty eyes, some coughing or sneezing, and then of course, unfortunately, sudden death. So while all birds are potentially susceptible to avian influenza, some of them are much more likely to become infected, to be severely affected, and to die from the infection. So those groups of birds include domestic birds, like we've been talking about, but then in terms of wild birds, it's really our waterfowl, so all of our geese, ducks, swans, shorebirds, cormorants, loons, and then also our raptors, so things like eagles, hawks, owls, falcons, that are really affected. And there are a couple other factors too that can influence how susceptible a bird is. Things like birds that nest colonially, like cormorants. As you can imagine, that means that the risk of transmission between birds is much higher because there's a lot of birds living so closely together. And then another thing is birds that are scavengers. So things like vultures, bald eagles, and even some of our corvids like crows and raven can be affected just because they might be scavenging on a bird that died from the infection. Okay, so let's talk about the status of avian influenza right now as of this recording, which is Thursday, May 5th. So it's spread through domestic birds in 32 states and to wild birds in 34 states. Most of the states that are free of the infection are out west, either in the Southwest or the Pacific states. In Michigan specifically, we have 7 counties where domestic birds have been infected. Those are from 11 different sites in 7 counties. Most of those are downstate, but there was a site in Wexford County and then also one in Menominee County in the UP, for a total of 820 backyard flock birds. Individuals, 820 individuals, not 820 flocks, that have been affected. Interestingly, no commercial flocks have been affected yet. On the wild bird side, we have 38 confirmed cases of wild bird infection and mortality from the infection. That number is probably a lot higher. You know, we just don't know. It's harder to test wild birds, but like we were talking about, mostly affects raptors and waterfowl, so pretty much all of the birds that have been affected in Michigan are waterfowl, like different species of swans, tundra swans, mute swans, a lot of Canada geese, and then a lot of different types of ducks. And then raptors that have been affected in the state of Michigan are snowy owls, great horned owls, barred owls, bald eagles, and a couple others. As of a couple days ago, there hadn't been any known wild bird infections in northern Michigan, but just on April 26th was the first confirmed infection of a wild bird in Antrim County, and that was a hooded merganser that died, and then the DNR tested it, and it did come back positive. So far, too, they've been spreading since then throughout northern Michigan. I know that there was a confirmed detection in Presque County as well. If you want to keep track of this and really be on it, a great website is the USDA Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service, or APHIS. If you just Google USDA APHIS, avian flu, it'll come up, and they've got these great maps that show in pretty real time, they're updated pretty regularly, the status in different states, and you can search for Michigan, you can search by county, you can search by species. It's an awesome tool. All right, so let's talk about what we can do to help stem the spread of this virus and decrease the effect that it's going to have on both our domestic and wild birds. First of all, if you have a domestic flock or a backyard flock, try not to share equipment with neighbors right now, and try to clean your equipment if it's going to be transferred to any new area with hot water and a 10% bleach solution. If you're concerned about wild birds, I should say that there's no evidence that songbirds are very susceptible to avian influenza, but if you want to do it out of an abundance of caution, or if you have a domestic flock nearby a bird feeder, or if you're seeing a lot of waterfowl activity sometimes underneath your bird feeder, maybe ducks or something are coming up to get the corn, you can take down your bird feeder. It could be helpful. There's no recommendation per se from the state, or no order at least, to do that at this time. But the official line is that it could be helpful. If you don't want to take it down, make sure that you clean it at least once a week with hot water, 10% bleach solution. Make sure to rinse it really well, and then let the feeder dry totally before you put it back up. This prevents things like mold from getting, or fungal spores from getting in the feed too. And also, this is actually something that every person that feeds birds should be doing anyway, because it protects birds from a lot of other pathogens like salmonella and certain things that happen from fungal spores or different bird contact at feeders. Again, if you're going to leave your bird feeder up, in addition to washing it once a week, you're going to want to make sure that the area underneath it is kept really clean. And then another thing you can do is that if you come into contact with a bird that seems at all unhealthy, make sure that you wash your clothes and your shoes before you go to another location, if that's possible, or at least as soon as possible after the encounter. If you find a bird that you're like, all those symptoms that we talked about, I am worried this bird has avian flu, the best thing to do is report it to the Michigan DNR on their Eyes in the Field website. So if you just Google Michigan DNR Eyes in the Field website, the report form will pop up. Yeah, hopefully, this won't take a super long time to sort of work its way out of the environment and the system. But in the meantime, staying aware and up to date is one of the best things that we can do. All right, so thanks everybody for watching this, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.